Hello, the Pioneer viewers. The Russia-Ukraine war remains on our agenda. As you know, the war has been going on for more than 2 years, and the impressions of the war and the processes are quite intense. While the parties continue their mutual attacks, there is also the active participation of international politics. All these war processes and developments are taking place in front of the eyes of the world, and Russia's unlawful invasion attempt and its intervention throughout the war have been met with a great reaction, especially from the Western world. Russia's moves are met with a great reaction by European countries specifically and the US. So the Russian economy has suffered serious losses due to the US sanctions and embargoes. So as a result of the US imposing these conditions on other countries of the world, Russia has become a country to be avoided in the international arena in economic terms. So countries around the world started to join the sanctions against Russia due to the economic concerns, especially China. Perhaps the most difficult period for Russia came when Chinese banks joined the sanctions. Throughout the war, relations between China and Russia continued to improve. But after recent events, relations seems to have been damaged. So in this war, states primarily act according to their own interests, and considering their own interests, the states have to make the most logical decisions. For this reason, Chinese banks participated in the sanctions, taking into account their own interests. So the Russian economy is facing difficulties in this situation, and what kind of situation the Moscow administration will adopt is under this discussion. So another news that shook the Moscow administration came the other day. A very important Russian facility was heavily damaged in an operation organized by the Ukrainian army units. And according to the information obtained, the attack facility was producing fighter jets for the Russian army. So the attack, which took place as part of the Ukrainian army's strategic offensive operation, ended successfully. And Moscow launched a major investigation after this attack. It does not seem possible to produce for a long time in the facility where the attack took place. But now, if you're ready, let's examine the latest developments together. As you know, as the Pioneer, we continue to bring you the latest developments, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. You know that I read all of your comments on our videos, so please continue to share them with me. And let's start if you're ready, because the Pioneer reports. So the Ukrainian forces have struck a factory in eastern Russia tasked with producing bombers for Moscow's military, according to the statements released by Kiev authorities. So the operation to attack the factory contains incredible details. Since the beginning of the war, Kiev troops have been inflicting heavy losses on the Russian army with the strategic attacks. And Ukraine's main intelligence directorate told news outlets that a drone strike the Grubovov aviation plant in Russia's Tatarstan region in the morning of the previous day. The plant in Kazan, the regional capital, produces missiles, carriers, and special purpose aircraft, and including Tu-22M3 and Tu-160M bombers. In the plant is located 435 miles east of Moscow and about 808 miles from Ukrainian borders. Sources in Ukraine's main intelligence directorate said Ukraine is still assessing the consequences of the attack, and no casualties have been reported. So according to local sources, social media users reported that the air raid sirens were heard in the Kazan region, but local time on the morning of the attack. As a result of the intensive work of Ukrainian intelligence, the factory in the region was identified. However, having identified the factory, Ukrainian intelligence had to make a serious plan. According to the statements made by the Ukrainian intelligence official, the plans were prepared with a great care. The time when the factory was most suitable for the attack was determined at the operation that was launched. And the Russian Defense Ministry reported that it shot down 2 Ukrainian drones over the Tatarstan and Mordovia regions on the morning of the incident. And the head of the Republic of Mordovia, Artem Zidonov, said in statements that the people of the region should not be alarmed. Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency also announced in a post of social media that civilian flights were temporarily suspended on the morning of the attack at Kazan, and Nizhnemansk airport, both in Tatarstan. The disruption of the flights and problems in the air traffic has been criticized by many, and the Ukrainian military has stepped up its attacks on the Russian territory in recent months, including recently hitting a military radar site in the city of Kovalinko. The recently hit radio engineering center is located about 360 miles away from the Ukrainian border, and the Ukrainian military's successful offensive operations against the Russian distant Russian targets are unsettling Russian purpose. This is a huge news. So the Russian President Vladimir Putin had said Ukraine's attacks on the Russian territory could be grounds for Moscow to resort to nuclear weapons in the more than 2-year-old war. And according to the 2020 presidential decree, the conditions for nuclear weapons include attacks on critical states or military facilities of the Russian Federation. An attack on the military base in the northern Crimea last night killed some 30 Russian personnel working at the airport in Dzhankoy and wounded 80 others, local media reported. Natalia Homanyuk, a spokeswoman for Ukraine's southern forces, told reporters that Dzhankoy was a legitimate military target, but declined to give further details. As the Ukrainian army intensified its offensives, Russia is dealing with another problem. Several Chinese banks have restricted transaction from the Russian people, dealing another blow to an already isolated Moscow economy. So according to the Russian newspaper, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, the world's third largest bank by market capitalization, and 3 other top lenders have stopped accepting almost all payments from Russia to circumvent U.S. punishment for helping that country in its war against Ukraine. China has opposed sanctions against Russia since the war started at 2022 invasion, and has revived its northern neighbor's isolated economy through strong trade and investments. Yet, Chinese banks have become increasingly risk-averse since the President Joe Biden signed an executive order in December imposing secondary sanctions on the wide range of sectors deemed to support Russia's military supply chain. Following the decisions, other states of the world started to join the sanctions. So, also, I need to add something else. This is not written in the text, but you should remember that after the sanctions and embargoes happened on Russia, the Russian air systems and the Russian airland was completely closed. And in order for the aviation and all of the flights to pass through the Asia, they needed, basically the world needed a platform and a space to have the flights there. So China, the neighbor and the friend of Russia, opened it easily and without, it was so subtle, and it was without anything. So the thing that I'm trying to say is that China betrayed Russia way before all of these sanctions and embargoes. And also I need to know your comment on it. So let's get back to the video. How do you interpret the attack by the Ukrainian army, and what do you think the hitting of the facility producing for the Russian army is indicative of? And what are your thoughts on the strategic operations of the Ukrainian army? And how do you think the course of the war can be interpreted? And you know that I really care about your opinion, so please continue commenting.